All right, welcome back to Coast AM. Richard Serrett sitting in for George Norrie, coming to you live from Athens, Greece. And again, no COVID, no politics, no war. Let's just keep it and fun. Fun. Well, it's not always fun. Sometimes it's scary, but your encounters with high strangeness. Let's say we begin with Keith, east of the Rockies in Cleveland, Ohio. Keith, welcome to Coast. How are you?
Good morning, Richard. Great, great. Very, very interesting topics and shows, and very interesting to listen about the Beatles. But as far as interesting experiences now, first of all, Richard, I am blind. And I've had some experiences that I really can't comprehend. And a couple of them have even saved my life.
Oh, wow. Do tell.
Well, I always haven't been blind, and so I push myself to get out. And this has been a couple of years. I push myself to walk out, especially good weather, to stores. And it was a nice summer day, and I'm out, and I'm taking a nice brisk walk with my cane and walking, and all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, I need to make a crossing of a major street. Okay, so I'm very, very good at making sure that light would change, and I had the right of way. I started walking, and I'm on a brisk walk, and I'm like, okay, no problem. And all of a sudden, I felt something tell me, definitely stop. And that was so weird, because I stopped. Within a couple seconds, I had my cane sticking out. A car ran over my cane.
Wow. Wow, that was a close call.
That's what I'm thinking. It was so terrifying, and yet it ruined my cane. But literally, if I wouldn't have stopped, I would have been hit.
You said you felt it. Did you feel it, or did you hear a voice say stop?
I almost heard a voice. I heard and felt almost like stop, stop, stop.
Inside you, like it wasn't someone on the street corner warning you, like another pedestrian behind you, let's say.
And that was what was so scary to me, and it freaked me out, but it literally saved my life.
Do you think it was a guardian angel?
I honestly, truth, believe that, because I rarely ever had that happen, and it amazed me. It amazed me, and people say, oh, yeah, right, that didn't really happen, Keith. And then I still have proof, because I have the old cane that I don't use, and it has such a major bend in it.
Keith, thank you so much for sharing. That's a remarkable story. Yeah, I've got to listen to those inner voices. Maybe it's just ourselves, our subconscious minds talking to us, or maybe, perhaps, it is the voice of our guardian angel. On the wild card line, Robert is in Missouri. Robert, good morning. Welcome to Coast.
Good morning, Richard. This is Robert. How are you doing tonight?
I'm well. How are you?
The afternoon I was tuning across the ham band, and I heard Art Bell giving a general call, so I called him, and he was mobile. This was darn near 20 years ago. Cool thing about ham radio is you can talk all over the world, and it's great for emergency traffic and whatnot. I love it. But anyway, yes. That's about all I got tonight. Thank you, Richard.
Oh, that's okay. Well, thank you for sharing. I was wondering about whether ham radio operators are still out there, and whether that's still a thing. Shortwave radio. I used to work at a radio station in the 90s into the 2000s in Toronto, and they would always announce the frequency on shortwave, where you could find it on the long band. And we would get postcards from all over the world, people who were listening to CFRB AM 1010 on shortwave. I think it was the 49-meter band, if I'm remembering correctly. All right, let's see where to go next. Let's say hi to John in Wisconsin. John, good morning. Welcome to Coast AM.
Hello, Richard. A couple things for you, please. Foremost, excellent interview with Chuck. I've been a Beatles fan since 1964. It was really great to hear the stories, and look forward to getting Chuck's book with all the pictures in it. Secondly, Richard, I think it is so cool you're doing the show from Greece, one of the most historic and beautiful countries in the world. Prior to losing my eyesight 4 years ago, and it's interesting that your first caller, Keith, was blind because I'm blind as well, but visiting Greece was on my bucket list. However, Richard, I wanted to share with you some wonderful experiences I've had with Greek people. I was in food service sales for 30 years. A big portion of my customer base was family restaurants, and a large portion of those were owned by Greeks. And Richard, I want to tell you, they are some of the hardest working, loyal, nicest people I've ever dealt with. And I struck a relationship up with them. I've learned a little bit of their language, and I just had a wonderful time with them. And you obviously have a affliction to Greece or an attraction to Greece, and I don't blame you. But I just wanted to let everybody in the Coast to Coast audience know that if you run into a family restaurant that's operated by a Greek, you're going to get a fabulous meal at a reasonable price with wonderful hospitality. I love the Greeks, and Richard, they used to call me Yanni Parikari, which means big, strong, and good looking. It's not true, but I like hearing it that they call me that. But anyway, enjoy your visit in Greece, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you, John. It's true. The hospitality is mind-blowing. Just to give you a quick example, my neighbors two floors down, Apostolia and Vios, such a wonderful retired couple, and they know that my brother and I are staying here. We're on our own up here, and Apostolia is running food up and down the stairs for us, and I keep saying it's not necessary, but for them it's just they love to do it, and it's so warm, it's so heartwarming. They're so welcoming and so giving, and it means so much to them when people come to this country. And if you try and speak Greek, and I do, and my Greek is horrible, I can order in a restaurant. But it is so heartwarming when you try. You see the appreciation on the faces of the taxi drivers or the person who's selling newspapers on the street corner. They really appreciate the fact that you try. And if you make a mistake, they don't care. That's what draws me to Greece again and again, more than anything. Yes, the Acropolis is amazing, and the Temple of Zeus, and all of that. But it is the hospitality and the warmth and the values of the people here. That's what keeps me coming back. Let's say hi to our good friend Cornelius in Alexandria, Louisiana. Cornelius, welcome to Coast once again. How are you, buddy?
Hey, Richard, boy, I tell you, I've really been enjoying you, and that Beatles, boy, that was something else. And I know Tommy Danheiser has really been enjoying it. I'm going to tell you one quick story and then something else. When Tommy and George were in Columbus, Ohio, wherever they go, I call the local police department. So I call them, and they said, yeah, we got a special detail at that Lincoln Theater in Columbus for Coast to Coast AM host George Norway and Tommy Danheiser. We're going to make sure, Mr. White, that they're safe and sound. So I pray that you over there in Greece with your lovely wife and your brother and probably your kids and everything, I hope you'll be safe and sound. Now I'm going to go on with my story. All right, they call me the God, Guns, and Gold Man, the Bible, Bullets, and Beans Man. I'm here down here where there's a lot of voodoo, hoodoo, you-do, and everything else. So, Richard, I was telling Tommy and George, and even Connie got a chance to hear this. At our city council meeting here in Alexandria, Louisiana, there's a demon that comes on there when I'm talking about my dead dad. They were going to honor him August the 13th at Newman United Methodist Church here in Alexandria, Louisiana. You can go to their Facebook page, and you'll see them honoring them. Well, August the 8th, our city council meeting, I'm talking about my dad, and you'll hear this thing grumbling and growling and everything else. And I've just been under demonic attack. My tubs, they froze and everything. You know how you turn the knobs to run water? My tubs froze. And it's just different things. His electronics, I lost his TV maybe a month after he passed, and then just different electronics. His truck quit just this year, and it'll be 3 years since he passed. But he always loved Coast to Coast AM, and I've got to say something. We're all a family and stuff, and I really miss my dad and mom. Next month, my mom will have been gone 11 years, and they prayed for my mom, and she lasted 3 years. She's supposed to die in 1 year of multiple myeloma, but because of the Coast to Coast prayers, and it's just, this is a great audience, great listeners, great callers, great guest hosts, and I just don't know what I'd do without Coast to Coast AM. I talked to Art Bell. Art Bell used to call me Wild Card White. That was his nickname for me. And
well, I'm glad we're here for you, and we're glad you're out there, Cornelius. But let me just ask you about this demonic grumbling you heard at the city council meeting. Did you hear it as you were speaking, or only after you watched the video back on YouTube?
Let me tell you this. A friend of mine named John, and if you go to YouTube, Cornelius Lawson White, Demon, and that's how you'll see the video. But John has been collecting different things from my city council appearances, or if I'm on C-SPAN's Washington Journal, on Book TV, because I call different shows and different things like that. And so it's just amazing to hear this, because like I said, Richard, you just wouldn't believe it. Joe from Monterey, California, has been praying for me and stuff. He's an angelic warrior and stuff, like Bill Bean. And it's just different things have been happening to me. And like I said, my electronics and stuff have been, well, my dad's electronics. Just like this phone. I'll be fully charged.
Why do you think you're under attack, Cornelius?
Say that again?
Why do you think you're under attack?
I believe, like I said, we're in the last days and stuff. And it's just a whole lot of demonic things, just like that war over there in Israel and that poor fella in Maine going crazy and stuff like that. We're just under demonic attack. And I think because we're in the last days and I'm trying to warn people to get ready, I don't believe in the rapture. So I just think we need to get together and get ready, and just a whole lot of things. Like you said, you don't want to stick on politics or anything, but I want to stick on policy and stuff. And I can remember, Richard, when I was going to school, we had the prayer, the pledge, the Negro national anthem, and the national anthem. Of course, the whites had the prayer and the pledge and the national anthem. Then they took that out of school, took the Bible, took the Ten Commandments and stuff. So we're not a godly country anymore. We used to be. But a lot of young folks, see, they'll take the mark of the beast because, oh, this technology, you can get to your account quicker. Just put a chip in your head and your hand. Elon Musk is saying, I can make the blind see, them poor blind callers. I can make you see. Just put this chip in your head. Or I can make you walk. Just put this chip in your back. So they're going to use technology to try to get people to go along with the mark of the beast. And I just hope people are ready and don't take it. Don't take it. That's the way you lose your soul. You can never get redeemed if you take the mark of the beast.
Cornelius, thank you for that. I do worry about a central bank digital currency for sure. Privacy concerns and just control over what we purchase. All right, let's see. Do we have time for one more? Yes, we do. Before the break at the bottom of the hour, Pete is in Charlotte, North Carolina. Pete, welcome to Coast. Good morning.
Rich, Grit's the best rock and roll show I've heard on Coast. I congratulate you on that. And a couple of things I just want to say real quick. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine, Pete. Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Yeah. The Beatles' first album, where you meet the Beatles, I want to say that Ringo's drumming on that is superb. In my opinion, he really drove that whole album. It's the best I've heard of. And another thing you touched on, which I was really glad they did in the book about the Beatles playing to cities in the South where segregation was in place. My kids don't believe this, but they actually used to segregate rock and roll shows. So I was playing about 10 years before the Beatles, and I actually had to play shows like that to make money. But case in point, there was one particular show, I forgot which city it was in, where the Beatles had booked Sam Cooke as their opening act, which you ain't going to believe this, man. But the local chapter of the Ku Klux Klan threatened the show if Sam Cooke appeared on the show. So for safety's sake, they had to cancel the show.
Oh, dear.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
But anyway, we go on for hours with this stuff. You keep rocking, and like I said, I really dug the show.
Oh, Pete, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. All the best. All right, I'm going to try and squeeze one more in. Michael's in Oregon. Michael, welcome to Coast.
Hey, Richard, I want to say you do a great job every time you host, and you have an all-star lineup of hosts along with George Norrie. I'm also a big Beatles fan. I'm 70, so I grew up with the Beatles. Loved them. Loved your guest, Chuck, there. Thank you for having him. I want to get his wonderful books, and I collect Beatles books, and I have one that covers that tour. It was called Beatles 64, A Hard Day's Night in America, about that 64 tour. And I had a boss at Kmart years ago. True story. She was a senior at Ballard High School in Seattle, August 64, and she was the editor of her high school paper. She got a press pass to interview the Beatles and got a ticket to their concert at Seattle Coliseum. And she goes, I went into a reception room. I had a half hour with all four Beatles, and I got to interview them. And I got an autograph and a hug from all four Beatles. I said, what a lucky gal. And she said, that's a true story. And they stayed at the Edgewater Inn in Seattle. And how they had to get them out of there, they had to lower a rope out of a window, and they had to climb down into a boat to get out of there. But the fans had it all surrounded. That's a true story in
That's a
Seattle
great story.
in 64. But
Wow.
yeah, what a lucky gal. She goes, yeah. And I said, what were they like? She goes, oh, they were great. John and Paul were very smart. Ringo was funny. And George was kind of quiet. He was strumming his guitar.
The quiet Beatle. That's it.
Yeah.
Michael, I got to run. I'm sorry to cut you short here. We're up against the clock here, rolling into the bottom of the hour. But thank you. Great story. Back with more of Open Lines right here on Coast to Coast AM. All right, back to the phones we go for Open Lines here on Coast to Coast AM. And Leonardo is in Minnesota. Leonardo, welcome to Coast. Good morning.
Hi, and your name is Richard, right?
Richard, that's right.
Richard, yeah, because I've talked to George, and anyway, the reason that I'm calling is because you had two people who called probably about in the last 10 minutes who both are blind, and they were talking about their experiences, and especially the guy with the cane, and he's walking across the street, and I guess a vehicle drove across his cane and could have hit him. And where I work at, I do security, and I'm not blind, but I tell people a lot of times, and they don't believe me, I can literally feel them right before they come, and I know kind of who's behind me. I don't know how to say if it's you were asking the person who was behind it, if it's like a guardian angel or anything. I don't know what it is, but some people have that ability about themselves, and I don't know if it's it's not about being blind or that you have sight, but it is actually real. That's all I wanted to call and say.
Well, no, it's interesting. So if someone is standing beside you, like, for example, many people are able to tell if they're being stared at. Like you're standing there, and all of a sudden you have this sense someone is staring at you, and you turn around, you look around, and there's someone staring at you. And Rupert Sheldrake, I think he wrote an entire book called about this, called The Sense of Being Stared At. So there is something to it. And I don't know whether it is if someone is in close enough proximity, and I don't know what that distance is. That what do they call that? Your etheric fields maybe are intermingling, and so you sense that there may be an actual, I don't know, biological, physiological reason that we'll one day discover why some of us have this ability. And I think you're right. You don't have to be blind, but if you have lost that sense, I think you're hyper aware, and your other senses are elevated to compensate for the loss of sight, and so maybe they're a little more in tuned with that. Great call, thank you. Let's say hi to Kevin in Toronto. Kevin. Good morning. Welcome to Coast.
Hi, how are you, Richard?
I'm
Actually,
well.
Seoul, Ontario. I had called Tommy and told him I was at the Toronto concert of the Beatles in 1964. I was 15 years old, and I was with my older sister and her girlfriend. And it was a crazy thing because we were way up in, if you remember Maple Leaf Gardens, I was up in the old grays, up in the end corner.
The cheap seats.
And
that's right.
They looked like little ants on the stage. But it was a fantastic show. The kids around us were going crazy. I had a pair of binoculars, and I'm trying to see the stage with the Beatles on them. And Brian Epstein was sitting at the corner of the stage, actually, while they were performing. And this one girl just yanked the binoculars out of my hand, almost brought me right over the seat and railing and the grays in Maple Leaf Gardens.
Wow. How did they sound? Do you remember? How did it sound?
You could make them out. It was audible, but like you say, with the wattage that those amplifiers were putting out, it certainly wasn't like what they can do today. But
true.
But again, true.
I guess was it more about the spectacle of just about seeing them rather than actually listening to the music?
Yeah, it was, because I remember, like they say, I was only 15, but we were lined up outside Maple Leaf Gardens, and it was a warm day, and you kept on hearing rumors. Oh, there they are! They're in that car, and it was just crazy before you even got into the thing, and the officers that were taking security in that. The one guy, when I went to the washroom, he says, "These kids are nuts,"
Do you think when young people go to concerts today, Kevin, that they have that same excitement, that same sense of anticipation when they go to see their favorite artist?
I'm 75 years old, but my daughter, when she went to a couple of concerts, yeah, they were excited, but not the enthusiasm back in the day where the Beatles, the Stones, it was like the British invasion. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, it was all so new. New, and there were just very few ways that you could listen to music. You would hear a single on the radio, and then you would go down to the record shop, Sam the Record Man in Toronto. You would buy that. You might have to line up to buy that single, 45, take it home, put it on the turntable.
I bought my albums. I got the first one, then I got Rubber Soul, I got Magical Mystery. I still got them. I got them squirreled away in the garage somewhere.
Well, hold on to those for dear life. Great call, Kevin. Thank you so much. Great to talk to you. All right, let's say hello to Joe is in Monterey, California. Joe, welcome to Coast.
Thank you for taking my call, Richard. And
my
happy
pleasure.
Halloween to you, too.
Thank you.
I have a lot of scary stories, but I wanted to answer Cornelius' question and the other person's question. When a person starts to get involved with certain knowledge, they create a world that gravitates around them. And that's an expression for occultists and people who experience or investigate the unknown, the hidden. After a while, you will your experience will broaden you. And if you raise your state of consciousness through meditation and certain spiritual practices, you will be like a magnet, if you will, or you will send out a light that can be seen on the astral plane and other places. The reason why some people, like Cornelius and other people, when they are a threat, however little or however much, to the dark side will reply, you might say. And there's different forms of psychic attack. It could be very, very subtle, or it can be very obvious. There are not only demons, but there are negative extraterrestrials that will harm people. Now, this is part of my profession as a healer. I had to learn all about this, and I learned it through experiences. And that's the hard part. Now for a scary story. Okay. By the way, when a person is very knowledgeable, they're like a vortex of that knowledge. So if you're into the high strangeness, you will open up like a doorway or a portal, or thin the veil, so to speak. So other people around you may have experiences when you're there. So
that's interesting. All right.
Also happens.
Okay, let's have that scary story, Joe.
Oh yes. Okay. So my ex-girlfriend was going to a workshop, and I wanted to check on her and see if she's okay, and I went there too. And I walked into this large room where there was a lot of people, and there was a person in the back of the room that my unconscious, subconscious, my intuition said extraterrestrial. And I didn't want to get involved because it was a negative thing there. And I went to the front of the class, on the front of the room. And when I sat down, I felt her presence right behind me. I turned around, there she was. A second or two after I sat down. So they will come to you if they know you. Now, all
what did she
the
look
good
like?
ones too, the angels.
What did she look like?
Okay, so she invited me to visit. She wanted to talk to me. Okay, so I was curious, fool that I am, and I went over to her apartment, and there was her and her husband. He was doing a painting, and it was all in black paint, and it was all symbols, and it was demonic. I knew what it was, demonic. And she talked to me, and she said that she was changing into a Pleiadian through transmissions back and forth. Now, I understand entrainment. I understand the genetics can change through frequencies, and we can change ourselves. When we educate ourselves, we have an effect on our genes. But this was a transformation into a negative Pleiadian at that. And she wanted me to invite the Pleiadians. She said, how would I be able to bring a ship to Earth? And she was talking about a council of all these different members. I said, that's nice. I heard of these things. That's nice. And she said, but I only want the Pleiadians to land first. They should land first. And I knew that this was a setup of some kind, that she wanted information on what to do, but she wanted me to do it. And I kind of passed on that, and I was very polite, and I left. But this happens to people, that they will be enticed to do something by the dark side. And
well, luckily you got out of there alive, Joe. That could have turned out very, very badly for you. I'm so glad that you were able to escape her clutches. Thank you for the call. Let's say hi to Gary's in California. Gary, welcome to Coast.
Wow. Can you hear me? Excuse me.
I can hear you, Gary.
I was just taking a drop of something here. Can you hear me, Richard?
I can hear you, Gary. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I was just going to give you a quick story. I'm an old Bay Area rock veteran from the 70s, born in Marin. Was at Winterland from the mid 70s. Saw every major band. I wanted to throw something real quick. I'm a shameless promoter of these girl groups in Japan, Love Bites, Bandmate, and Nemophila. You've got to check them out. They're the hottest stuff on the planet right now, and I know everything about hard rock music. Seen everybody. There's just nothing like them, and they're just phenomenal. Okay, and one thing real quick. The guy that was calling, one of your callers called and mentioned that he said he had a Beatles butcher, and he said he thought it was worth about $80. And I don't know what he's reading, but if he's got an original First State butcher, that record could be worth $10,000-$20,000 or more.
Well,
so anybody
maybe only if it's in.
That's got these originals, and I don't know what you know about the first, second, and third state. I won't go into all that. People can research that, but yeah, don't make. You might have a real monster, especially if you got that record back in the '60s. It's first state. It's not this. The second state's the one with the trunk cover. The paste over, those are still worth thousands if they're clean. But yeah, people really have to know what they're doing with those original records. Okay, anyway, my original reason for calling was just to try to throw you this story. I used to hang out in Mill Valley at a bar called The Brothers, and I knew a guy named Jay David. Do you know who Jay is, I'm guessing?
Jay David? No, doesn't sound familiar.
Jay David. He was a drummer for Captain Hook, and he was also the drummer for Crosby, Stills, and Nash in the 80s. And anyway, so he told me the story. He was actually in the room with David Crosby when he was in Dallas at Cardi's, and the cops came in and busted him for paraphernalia and that handgun. And he told me the story. Most people don't know that the rest of the story was that he was in there and he's smoking his coke and he's got his pipe and his torch, and the cops are banging on the door, and Jay's telling him he's trying to slap the pipe out of his hand. And he told me, he goes, Arnold Schwarzenegger couldn't get that pipe out of his hand. And he said, but right before the cops came in the door, he smacked his hand, which had a big bag of big rock cocaine in his hand, and he managed to slap that bag out of his hand, flew across the room, hit a wall, and dropped down behind a couch in the dressing room right before the cops came in. So they come in, and they see him with the pipe, and he's, it's still hot, and the cop says to David, he goes, "What's the matter with you, Mr. Crosby? Didn't you hear what happened to Richard Pryor?" And so anyway, and then he goes over and he digs around in the duffel bag and he pulls that gun out. Now Jay says, "I never knew that gun was in his bag. I had no idea he had a gun." Right. So anyway, the point is.
Okay, Gary, I gotta move along here because we're approaching the top of the hour. But sounds like you've had some interesting conversations over the years with some real rock and roll veterans. That's a great story. Thank you so much for that. All right, we're approaching the top of the hour. When we come back, more of your great calls right here on Coast to Coast AM.